So in this section, we're going to animate the lid opening on our laptop, and then we're going to clone the laptop, and we're going to see how we can use a plane effector to control the animation of the lid opening across our clones. So the first thing I want to do is set up the animation of my laptop opening. Now I've got a light in my scene here. Now if I go to my laptop in the object manager, I've got a lid here. If I grab my rotate tool, I can click and drag on this axis here and shut the lid so I can keyframe that opening and shutting. Now I just want to be careful because at the moment if I close the lid, the light is actually cutting through the lid, so I'd better clean that up after I set up this animation. So I'm just going to hold down Shift key, which will snap my rotate to 10-degree intervals, and just rotate this until the lid is shut. So I'm at frame 0 on my timeline here, my lid is shut. I've got the lid selected. Let's just hit the keyframe button here, so that'll set a keyframe, an initial keyframe for the lid. I'm going to have this open over 25 frames, so let's scroll forward on my timeline to frame 25. And I'm just going to open up this lid. I'm just going to hold down Shift, and let's open it up to 120, that'll do, 120 degrees. So frame 25, the lid's open, the lid's selected. Hit the keyframe button, so now I can see there's my keyframes there, and there's my lid opening. Great. Okay, so what I'll just do now is just want to shift that light so that it's not going to cut through the lid when the laptop opens. Okay, so that's the animation done. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to clone this laptop and set up the deformer so that I can control, sorry, not the deformer, the effector, so that I can control the animation. So I'm going to go to my MoGraph menu and create a cloner. And as you can see, this entire laptop assembly is in groups, and it has a master sort of laptop group on the top. That's going to go into my cloner. So now I've got a whole bunch of laptops. So let's just change some settings on my cloner so that these are closer together. Let's go to the cloner. I've got a grid array, which is what I want, and I'm just going to shrink down these values here on the size of my cloner. Now I have to be careful with my cloner that I don't put these too close together so that when they open they hit each other. So I'm just going to make sure there's a bit of a gap between all of these laptops. And what should happen is if I scrub through my timeline, we should see the laptops opening, which they are all at the same time, because the animation from 0 to 25 has been cloned across all of those laptops. Now, I'm using an old laptop here to run Cinema 4D, and my interface is starting to go a little slow. So what I'd like to do is try and speed up the way that this interface draws my laptop. I don't really need to see all of the details of my laptop. I don't need to see all the keys in great accuracy. All I need to do is be able to see these sort of laptop things opening. So what I can do is I can go to my cloner and go to my tags, and what I want to do is have a look through my tags here, and I'm looking for a tag called display. These have changed a little bit in Cinema 4D R25, which is what I'm using. And if we come down to the render tags, we want this one called display. Now what display does is it overrides the shading of my viewport and draws all my objects at a different level of detail. So what I can do is come to my tag that I've got here. Here it is on my cloner. Turn on this use setting, and we can change the shading mode. So grow shading, we can set that down to lines if we want to, which just draws the outlines or the edges of my my laptop. We can change it to hidden lines, which just shows the surface lines and doesn't show all of them all the way through. We can also change our style from wireframe down to box, which will just give us sort of a box outline of all our objects, and I can see straight away I'm starting to get much faster interaction in my viewport now, and this has made my interface much quicker to work with. So that's a lot more responsive now when I move around. Okay, so let's have a look at how to control this animation with a effector. First of all, I'm actually going to add a couple more clones into my system here, just so I've got a few more and we can see this a little clearer. Actually, I might add 5 in each direction. Hopefully this doesn't slow down my computer too much. Okay, so how do we control this animation with a effector? First of all, let's make the effector. I'm going to go to my cloner, go to MoGraph, effectors, and just make a plain effector. Now, when I do that, all my clones jump up into the air because the default setting for the plane effector, if we go to its parameters, is to change the position of all the clones and shift them up in the air 100 units. I don't want to do that at this stage. I just want to work on the animation timing. So let's turn that off. So plane effector controls position, rotation, and scale, but it also does a lot of other things as well. So in this section here, what I want to do is come right down to the bottom and have a look at the time offset. Now this is going to change or control the animation that we've got happening on our laptops. And what I've got on my timeline, if I click and drag, is I've got 25 frames of animation. So down the bottom in this time offset, I'm going to set that to 25 to matching the animation that I have. So when I do that now and have a look, what we now get is an offset of 25 frames, so the animation starts 25 frames later. That's not exactly what we want. Next step, we need to set up an effector. With the effector, we need to set up a field. So let's create a linear field. So in the field section, I'm just going to click on linear field and create one of those. I'm also just going to click and drag my linear field so that it's a little shorter. And what we can see now is there's actually some sort of action going on here, because where my field is, on one side the lids are open, on the other side they're partly closed. And if I click and drag this field through, we can see there is some partial animation going on here. That lid is partially opening and shutting. And if I scrub through here, what's happening now is I'm getting this slightly offset timed animation. But the problem is that the animation is still happening when I scrub through the timeline. I don't want that. What I want is the animation to happen as I drive this plane effector through it. So what we need to do is we need to tell the cloner how to manage the animation that's happening on these objects. So if we go back to our cloner and we go back to the transform section of our cloner, we need to tell it how to deal with the animation that is on each cloner. At the moment it's playing the animation, and this field is changing the offset of the playing animation. What we actually want is to fix that animation to the actual plane effector and its field. So once we've set that cloner transform animation mode to fixed, now what we get as we drag our field through, better make sure I've got my field selected. As we drag our field through, now we see that is actually driving the animation as we run it through there. So that's really important. As I said, the first section there was in my plane effector was to change the time offset to whatever animation timing we already have. And then in the cloner, we have to make sure under its transform section that our animation mode is fixed. So now we've got, keep selecting the wrong thing. Now we've got a field that when we drag it through our laptops, it controls the opening of the laptops. Now that's just using a plane effector. There's all sorts of other things we can do as well by changing the type of effector. So for example, if I delete that, that field in the plane effector and go to fields, I could, for example, create a spherical field. And what this will do will mean that laptops inside the center open and shut, and as the field goes through, we get this flowing animation effect. What we can also do with something like a sphere effector is we can position it in the middle of our clones, and we can actually animate the size of that effector. So if we were to animate that, we would have these laptops growing in size, or the animation growing from the center outwards by changing the size of this field here. We can combine all sorts of fields in there as well, and there are different types of fields that we can use as well. So we get a huge variety of options as to how we can control the animation. So what I'm going to do is just keyframe the size of my sphere effector so that the opening of the laptops occurs from the center outwards. So let's go to frame 0, set the size down to 0 and click this little button here to keyframe that particular value. And then over 75 frames, let's just go right down to 75. Let's change that size so it covers all of the laptops. There we go, and then just keyframe that again. And if I rewind and play, it's going a little slowly because these laptops are a little heavy in geometry for my laptop. But now we've got this nice growing field of laptops opening up. So the really important thing about all of this is that once we've got some animation in our cloned objects, we can control the timing of that animation using a plane effector and that animation mode in our cloner.